My son Anthony handed me a luxury cruise ticket for my 65th birthday. He said I deserved to rest. But when I went back to the house for my late wife's favorite hat, I overheard his real plan. The ticket was one way. He and his wife were planning to report me missing at sea. I stood there invisible in my own hallway, and I thought, all right, son, if that's what you want. But you have no idea who you're dealing with. The squeal of metal on metal. That was the first sound. A kitchen cabinet hinge. It had been crying out like that for 3 days, and I couldn't stand it any longer. My name is Julius Hayes. I'm 65 years old, a retired contractor. My whole life has been about fixing things, and I hate the sound of something broken right under my own roof. I was on my knees on the old linoleum floor, my knuckles greasy with WD-40 when they walked in. The front door just opened. No knock. No, hey Dad, you home? Just the sound of hurried footsteps on the hardwood floors I'd laid myself 30 years ago. Ugh, what is that smell? That was Brenda, my daughter-in-law. I pushed myself up slowly, my left knee, the one I had surgery on 6 months back, sending a sharp, angry message up my spine. It's machine oil, I said, my voice a low rumble. I turned to face them. Brenda, who is white, stood in the kitchen doorway, pinching her nose. She always wore expensive yoga clothes, as if she was always on her way back from a workout she never had. She looked at my house, the one I built with my own 2 hands, like it was something she'd stepped in. You're getting it all over the floor, she said, pointing to a single drop of oil. Hello, Brenda. Hello, Anthony. My son Anthony stood behind her, shifting his weight. 38 years old, a real estate broker. He was wearing a perfectly tailored navy blue suit that looked completely out of place in my old kitchen. He always looked a little embarrassed by this house, by this neighborhood, and maybe embarrassed by me. What are you doing, Dad? He asked. His eyes darted around, avoiding the cabinet I was working on. It was squeaking, I said, holding up the can of oil. Now it's not. Brenda let out a long, dramatic sigh. You should really hire someone for that, Mr. Hayes. She always called me Mr. Hayes, never Dad, like we were negotiating a contract. Anthony stepped forward, forcing a smile. It was his broker smile, the one that never ever reached his eyes. He held out a thick cream-colored envelope, the expensive kind of paper. I got something for you, Dad. I looked at the envelope, then at him. What is it? You deserve a rest, he said. You've worked your whole life. I wiped my greasy hands on an old rag I keep tucked in my belt. A cold, heavy feeling settled in my gut. Men like Anthony, they don't give gifts. They make investments. I pulled open the flap. A glossy brochure spilled out. Royal Caribbean, 10 Days in Paradise. The colors were too bright. Happy, smiling couples danced on a deck. I stared at it. A cruise. Yes. Brenda jumped in her own smile, just as fake. A luxury trip, for you to relax, recharge your batteries. I set the brochure on the counter next to a few loose screws. Rest. That word hung in the air, heavy and false. The old wall clock, the one my late wife Amina bought at a flea market, filled the silence. Tick, tock, tick, tock. It was the sound of my life, steady and true. But today it felt like a warning. Rest. Just last week, last Tuesday. Anthony had come by alone. He sat right at this kitchen table, right where I was standing. Dad, he'd said, his voice casual, too casual. He was looking out the window at the backyard. You know you're 65 now. Paperwork. It just gets more complicated. I just sipped my coffee. What's your point, Anthony? My point is, why don't you just sign this? He slid a thick stack of papers across the table. It's just a power of attorney, a durable POA. It just lets me handle the bills for you. You know property taxes, the light bill, just so you don't have to worry about it. I set my coffee mug down. The sound was loud in the quiet kitchen. I can worry about it, Anthony, I said. I still know how to write a check. I built this house from the foundation up. I think I can manage the light bill. His smile faded. I'm just trying to help Dad, you know, in case something happens. If something happens, I told him, my lawyer will call you. You don't need to worry about a thing. He left angry. I could see it in the set of his shoulders. And now here he was 1 week later with a cruise, a 10-day trip. I looked back at him. This must have cost a fortune. Don't you worry about that. Anthony said, waving his hand dismissively. It's my gift to you. All taken care of. Yeah. Brenda wasn't looking at me. She was looking at my kitchen, sizing it up. You know, she said not to me, but to Anthony, as if I was just a piece of old furniture. If we knocked out this ceiling, opened it up to the living room, it would have such better flow. We could put a big marble island right here. A hot, dark anger rose in my chest. This was Amina's kitchen. My late wife, she picked out every single one of these butter yellow tiles herself, said they made her feel sunny. Knock it out. This is a load-bearing wall, I said flatly. Brenda just blinked at me. Oh, well, she turned back to Anthony. Whatever, it needs to be updated. Updated. I repeated the word. This house is in southwest Atlanta. 30 years ago, when Amina and I built it, this was just a working-class neighborhood. Black families who owned their own homes. We poured the concrete, we raised the walls. Now it's up and coming. It's being gentrified. Young white couples were moving in, buying the old houses, gutting them, and flipping them for triple the price. Anthony, being a real estate broker, he knew that better than anyone. This house wasn't his home. It was an asset. It was a payday. So, this trip, I said, my voice steady, turning my back on Brenda to face my son. When is it? This Friday, Anthony said. Too fast. Today's Tuesday. That gives you 2 days to pack. 2 days? It was a last-minute deal, Dad. I had to grab it. Don't worry, I already booked your flight to Miami. A car will pick you up Friday morning, take you straight to the airport. Another car will pick you up in Miami, take you straight to the port. You just have to pack your bags. He had it all figured out. It wasn't a gift. It was an eviction. I looked for the boy I taught to ride a bike, the boy I carried on my shoulders. All I saw was a salesman. All right, I said, nodding slowly. If you've got it all figured out. Great. Anthony clapped his hands together once. You're going to love it, Dad. Yeah, I said, picking up the oil rag. Maybe I will. They left as quickly as they came. I stood alone in my kitchen. The squeaking was gone, but a new terrible alarm was ringing in my head. Friday morning. My suitcase, a small, old-fashioned Samsonite, was packed. I didn't have much to pack. A few pairs of slacks, some shirts, my shaving kit. What does a man pack for a trip he doesn't want to take? My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Your Uber is arriving now. Anthony had arranged it all. I dragged the suitcase to the front door. The driver, a young kid, didn't get out. He just sat there, the music from his car thumping loud enough to feel through the floor. I put my hand on the doorknob. And then I stopped. I patted my jacket pockets. Wallet, phone, keys, the hat. I forgot the hat. It was an old fedora, gray felt. It was Amina's favorite. She said it made me look like a movie star. I never went anywhere important without it. I walked back to the Uber. The kid rolled down his window, the music spilling out. Everything okay, man? I'll be right back, I said. Forgot something. I walked back to the house. I put my key in the lock, but the door pushed open. It wasn't locked. Anthony must have kept a key. I stepped inside. The house was silent, but then I heard it. A voice. Brenda's voice. From the kitchen. She wasn't using her sweet, high-pitched Mr. Hayes voice. This was her real voice, sharp and cold like broken glass. I stood perfectly still in the hallway, hidden by the shadow of the staircase. She was on the phone. No, Anthony, listen to me, she was saying, her voice tight with irritation. I double-checked the confirmation email. It is a one-way ticket, O-N-E, way. A pause. I could hear the faint, tinny sound of my son's voice on the other end. I don't care what he told you, she snapped. The booking is for a one-way flight to Miami and a one-way cruise ticket that ends in Belize. He is not coming back. My blood turned to ice. Belize. Just stick to the plan. Brenda continued, pacing back and forth in the kitchen. I could see the back of her head. He's on the ship for 10 days. Sometime around day 7 or 8, you call the cruise line. You say you haven't heard from him. You're worried. By the time the ship docks in Belize and he's not on it, you report him missing at sea. Missing. At sea. It's perfect, Anthony. An old man, 65, maybe he got confused. Maybe he fell. These things happen all the time. After he's legally declared missing, the house is ours. The transfer on death deed is already filed. It's clean. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My heart felt like a cold, hard stone in my chest. A memory sharp and sickening flashed in my mind, 6 months ago, right after my knee surgery. I was in the hospital bed groggy from the anesthesia. Anthony was there, sitting by the bed, looking concerned. "Hey, Dad," he'd said softly. "The hospital has some more forms. Just standard post-op stuff, health insurance liability waivers, you know how it is." He handed me a clipboard with a thick stack of papers. "My eyes are blurry, son," I'd told him. "Can't read the fine print." "It's nothing, Dad, don't worry," he said, his voice so reassuring. "Just sign here, and initial here. It's just to make sure your insurance covers everything." I trusted him. I was tired, I was in pain, and he was my son. I signed where he pointed. I didn't read a single word. Oh God, what did I sign? A transfer on death deed. In the kitchen, Brenda let out a sigh. "Look, he's probably in the Uber right now. It's done, Anthony. We just have to be patient. I'll see you at the office." I heard the click as she ended the call. I heard her footsteps walking towards the hallway. I didn't think, I just moved. Silent as a shadow, I stepped backward, out the door. I pulled it shut so gently it didn't even latch. I walked back to the Uber, my face calm. The driver was still bobbing his head to the music. "You good?" he asked. I opened the back door. I got in. "I'm good," I said, my voice perfectly level. "Let's go to the airport." The anger wasn't hot. It was cold. It was a cold, hard, perfect clarity. The adjustment had begun. The drive to Hartsfield-Jackson was a blur. I sat in the back of the Uber, the city of Atlanta passing by like a movie I wasn't watching. My mind was working. Fast. The driver dropped me at the departures curb. I walked inside into the noise and the bright fluorescent lights. I found a quiet corner. I pulled out my phone. I sent a text to Anthony. "Made it past security. Thanks for everything, son. Love you." I watched the check mark turn blue. He read it. Good. I looked up at the big departure board. Gate B12. Miami. My flight. I turned and walked in the opposite direction. I walked out of the domestic terminal into the humid Georgia air and got on the shuttle bus to the international terminal. I didn't have an international flight, but I needed a different airline, a different set of gates. I walked up to the Delta counter. "Sir, this counter is for—" "I need a ticket," I said. "Today. Now." The woman looked at me surprised. "Where to, sir?" "Chicago," I said. "Chicago. Sir, you can fly to Chicago from the domestic terminal." "I want to fly from this terminal, on this airline, one ticket, to Chicago, one way." She saw the look in my eyes. She didn't argue. "Yes, sir. That'll be $340. I'm paying cash." I pulled the emergency money I always keep in my shoe, money Amina made me carry. "For a real emergency, Julius," she'd always said. This was a real emergency. An hour later, I was sitting at a gate for Chicago. Not Miami. Why Chicago? Chicago wasn't random. My sister's daughter, my niece Nia, lived in Chicago. Nia was smart. Not just smart sharp. She was a lawyer, a real one. The kind that argues in court, not the kind that just shuffles papers for real estate deals. Anthony couldn't stand her. He hated her. He always said she was too smart for her own good and always in other people's business. She was the one who called me after Anthony's visit last week. He must have complained to his cousins. "Uncle Julius," she'd said, her voice serious, "I heard Anthony was asking you to sign a power of attorney." "I handled it, baby girl," I told her. "Good, because you don't sign anything from him. Not one single piece of paper, you hear me? Not without me reading it first." I should have told her then about the hospital papers, but I was embarrassed. Embarrassed that my own son. I sat at the gate. I took my main phone, the one Anthony knew. I popped the SIM card out with a paper clip. I held the small chip in my hand. My whole life. I dropped it into a trash can. I powered the phone down and buried it in the bottom of my suitcase. Anthony wanted me gone for 10 days. Fine, I'd be gone. I would be a ghost, but I wouldn't be on a cruise ship. I'd be in a lawyer's office in Chicago. When the plane landed at O'Hare, the cold Chicago air was a shock. It snapped me to attention. I bought a cheap burner phone at a newsstand. I stood by the baggage claim and dialed her number. She picked up on the second ring. "This is Nia." "Baby girl," I said. "It's Uncle Julius." There was a half-second of silence. "Uncle Julius, what's wrong? You're supposed to be on a cruise. I just saw your text to Anthony." "I'm not on a cruise," I said, my voice low. "I'm at O'Hare, Terminal 2, baggage claim." "What, why?" "Because Anthony bought me a one-way ticket. He and Brenda, they're planning to report me missing at sea." I told her everything. The phone call I overheard. Belize, the POA request, the insurance papers I signed after my surgery. There was a silence on the line, but it wasn't a shocked silence. It was a cold, hard, calculating silence. The kind of silence that I'd heard from her when she was studying for the bar exam. "I knew this day would come," Nia said, her voice suddenly different. "All business, all steel." "I knew it, that bastard." "Okay, stay right where you are. Terminal 2, don't move. I'm coming to get you. I'm about 20 minutes out." "Nia, and Uncle Julius." She cut me off. "Don't talk to anyone else, not a soul. You're a ghost, you understand me. We have work to do." She hung up. I stood by the baggage carousel, a 65-year-old man in an airport hundreds of miles from home with nothing but a suitcase and a burner phone. They thought I was an old man. They thought I was finished. They thought I was a payday. I looked at my reflection in the dark glass of the terminal window. "All right, Anthony," I whispered. "You wanted me gone. I'm gone. Let's see how you like what happens next." Naya's apartment was on the 34th floor overlooking the lake. It was all glass and steel, clean lines and gray furniture. It was nothing like my house in Atlanta. It was the world my son Anthony wanted to live in. My niece Nia had actually built it for herself. She handed me a cup of black coffee. It was strong. I needed it. This was day 2 of my cruise. According to Anthony's plan, I was probably somewhere near the Bahamas right now, sipping a drink with an umbrella in it. Instead, I was sitting at a glass dining table in Chicago, feeling the winter cold radiate through the window. "Okay," Nia said. She was in her work clothes, a sharp, dark pantsuit. She was all business. "Tell me again, Uncle Julius, exactly what happened at the hospital." I took a sip of the hot coffee. The memory was hazy, shameful. "It was right after the knee surgery," I said, my voice low. "I was in the recovery room, still groggy from the anesthesia. The nurse had just checked my vitals." Nia was listening, her eyes fixed on me. Not judging, just gathering data. "Anthony came in," I continued. "He looked worried. He said the hospital had more forms for me to sign. He said it was standard, post-op stuff. Insurance forms, he called them, to make sure my plan covered the surgery." "And you signed them?" It wasn't a question. "He handed me a clipboard," I said, feeling the shame rise in me. "A thick stack of papers." My eyes were blurry, Nia. I told him I couldn't read the fine print. I couldn't even focus. "What did he say?" "He said, 'Don't worry, Dad. It's nothing. Just sign here and here.'" He was so reassuring, so helpful. I looked down at my hands that had built a house from nothing. "He's my son, baby girl. I was tired. I was in pain. So I signed. I signed where he pointed. I didn't read a single word." Nia was silent for a long moment. She stood up and walked over to her briefcase. She pulled out a sleek silver laptop. She didn't say, "You shouldn't have done that." She didn't say, "How could you?" She just sat down, opened the laptop, and her fingers started to move. The sound of the keys was sharp and precise. "All right, Uncle Julius," she said, her voice turning cold as steel. "Let's see exactly what you signed. Let's see what they've done." My heart started to pound. This was it. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Property records are public," she said, her eyes scanning the screen. "Fulton County, Georgia, the tax assessor's office, the county clerk. It's all online. If he filed anything related to your house, it's going to be in there." She navigated through 2 or 3 different government websites, typing in usernames and passwords with practiced speed. She was in. "Fulton County Public Records Search," she murmured. She looked at me. "What's the full address in Atlanta?" I told her. She typed it in. "Okay, now, your name." She typed Julius. Hayes. Hayes. Her finger hovered over the enter key. She took a deep breath. "Here we go." She clicked. A little blue circle started spinning on the screen, loading, searching. It felt like the longest minute of my life. I watched that spinning circle and I felt like my whole life, everything I had built was spinning right along with it. Come on, Nia whispered to the screen. And then it stopped. A list of documents appeared, line after line of digital files, dates, and legal codes. Nia's eyes scanned the list, moving fast. Then they stopped. She just stared at the screen. She didn't say anything. What? I said, leaning forward. Nia, what is it? She didn't answer. She just slowly raised one hand and pointed at the monitor. Oh no, she whispered. Oh, Uncle Julius. They already did it. I leaned in my heart, hammering against my ribs. What? Nia, what is it? She didn't answer right away. She just clicked on the first link. A digital copy of a document filled the screen. She scrolled down, then down again, her breath catching. Here it is, she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. She pointed to the top of the page. The title was in big, bold letters. Durable Power of Attorney. My stomach dropped. That's what he asked for. The week before. The paper I refused to sign. He didn't need you to refuse, Uncle Julius, Nia said, her voice hardening. He just needed a different opportunity. She pointed to the date at the bottom of the page. Look at this. Date of execution. 4 months ago. 4 months. I did the math in my head. That's the day after my knee surgery. Exactly, she said. She scrolled to the last page. My signature. It was shaky, barely legible, trailing off at the end. Is that your signature? She asked, though she already knew the answer. I nodded, the shame burning in my throat. My hand was shaking. From the medicine. I couldn't hold the pen right. Anthony. I had to stop. He held my hand. He helped me sign. He said it was just so I wouldn't have to worry about the insurance. Nia let out a sound, a mix between a gasp and a curse. He didn't just get a power of attorney, Uncle Julius. He got a durable one. Do you know what that means? I shook my head, feeling sick. It means it was effective immediately. She explained, her words sharp and precise like a surgeon's scalpel. It didn't require you to be incapacitated. It means from the second you signed that paper, he had the legal right to do anything in your name. Sell your car, access your bank accounts, liquidate your stocks, and God help us, make medical decisions for you. He had complete and total control, and he has had it for 4 months. I stared at my own signature, the one my own son had guided. He hadn't just steadied my hand, he had forced it. The insurance forms were a lie, a cover. This was the real document buried in a stack of medical jargon he knew I'd be too sick and too trusting to read. I felt like I was going to be sick. So he has my money. Nia scrolled back to the list of documents. Her face was pale. I'm afraid it's worse than that, Uncle Julius. The money, that's just the appetizer. Worse. How can it be worse? Her hand was shaking now, just slightly, as she pointed to the next line on the list, right below the power of attorney. This one, she said, filed on the exact same day, probably in the same hour. She clicked the link. Another document loaded. A transfer on death deed. A what? I leaned closer. Transfer on death. What does that mean? Nia looked up from the screen, and for the first time I saw real cold fear in my niece's eyes. It's a legal instrument, Uncle Julius. They've become common in the last few years. People use them to avoid probate court. It's efficient. Efficient how? It means, she said, speaking slowly, deliberately, that the moment a legal death certificate is issued, or in this case a judicial declaration of death, the property listed on this deed transfers immediately to the named beneficiary. No will, no probate, no delays. It bypasses the entire legal process. It's automatic, like a light switch. My mouth went dry. Beneficiary. Nia said nothing. She just scrolled down to the section of the deed titled Beneficiary. There was only one name. Sole beneficiary Anthony J. Hayes. I stared at my son's name. Transfer. On. Death. And suddenly everything clicked into place. The cruise. The one-way ticket. Belize. Brenda's voice on the phone. Report him missing at sea. My blood didn't just run cold. It stopped. This wasn't just a plan to steal my house. This was a plan to execute me. Legally. He's going to have me declared dead, I whispered. Nia nodded, her eyes dark. He sends you on a cruise, a one-way ticket. He waits a week. He calls the cruise line hysterical. I can't reach my father. He calls the Coast Guard. My elderly father, he was so excited, maybe he got confused, maybe he fell. The words echoed Brenda's. An old man. Maybe he fell. These things happen all the time. They'll search. Nia continued, her voice a low, furious monotone. They won't find you. You're not on the ship. You're not in Belize. You're a ghost. After a certain amount of time with you missing at sea, Anthony, your loving son, who has durable power of attorney, petitions a judge. He has you declared legally dead. And the house. The second the judge's gavel hits the wood, Nia said, hitting the glass table with her fist, the instant that declaration is filed with the county clerk, this transfer on death deed activates. The house, your house, Amina's house, automatically becomes his, clean, simple. No one can contest it. Your will. It doesn't matter. Me, I can't do anything. It's designed to bypass people like me. I finally understood. The one-way ticket to Belize wasn't just cruel. It was a critical part of the legal strategy. It made me disappear in a foreign country far from home, making the missing at sea story airtight. This is meticulous, Nia whispered, standing up from the laptop. She began to pace the apartment, vibrating with a cold fury. This isn't some spur-of-the-moment crime, Uncle Julius. This is elder fraud high level, the kind that's planned for months, the kind that's designed to be legally perfect. I sat back in the chair. The beautiful view of Lake Michigan was just a blur. The coffee in my cup was ice cold. That hospital, I said, my voice hollow. He walked in that room. He saw me lying there, helpless, still half poisoned from the anesthesia. He looked his own father in the eye. And he made you sign your own death warrant, Nia finished. She stopped pacing and looked at me, her expression unreadable. Well, she said, a strange, dangerous smile touching her lips. The problem with a plan that's legally perfect, she walked back to the laptop, is that it requires the other person to be dead. She cracked her knuckles. And you, Uncle Julius, are very much alive. It was day 4 of my cruise. According to the itinerary Anthony had so thoughtfully left on my kitchen counter, I was supposed to be in St. Thomas this morning. I was supposed to be on a glass-bottom boat tour. Instead, I was at Nia's dining table, drinking my 3rd cup of coffee, looking at a spreadsheet she'd made. We were trying to trace every bank account, every credit card, every possible asset I had, all linked to the power of attorney. We need to know what they're doing now, Uncle Julius, she said. They have the POA. They have the transfer on death deed. They think you're on a boat in the middle of the ocean. They feel safe. They're going to get sloppy. What do you mean? I asked. I mean, they're not going to wait, she said. People like this, they're arrogant. They think they're smarter than everyone. They're not just going to sit around for 10 days. Just then her laptop, the one open on the table, made a sharp ding noise. An email. Nia glanced at it. Her eyes narrowed. Speak of the devil, she muttered. What is it? Nia hadn't been idle. On day 1, after we found the documents, she'd hired a local security firm in Atlanta, a small, discreet company. Not to engage Uncle Julius, she'd explained, just to put eyes on the property, a drive-by wellness check service, twice a day, morning and evening, just to see if anything looks out of place. She'd told them I was an elderly client on vacation and she was my concerned niece, just wanting to make sure the house was secure. Now she clicked the email. It was from that security company. The subject line was just 2 words, urgent property activity. Nia, what does it say? She didn't answer. She was reading, her face getting tighter and tighter. She read it aloud, her voice flat as if she was trying to keep the rage out of it. To Ms. Nia Carter, per your request, our agent conducted a drive-by of the residence at 10:04 a.m. this morning. We need to inform you that there is significant activity at the property. Activity. I stood up. It says, There is a white panel van parked in the driveway. The side of the van is marked with the words, Estate, Clean Out, Services. I gripped the back of the chair. Estate Clean Out. Nia kept reading, her voice shaking now. Our agent observed 2 men in uniforms carrying items out of the house. They are actively removing furniture from the home and placing it in the van. The front door is wide open. A white woman, matching the description you provided, is on the front porch directing them. Brenda. It was Brenda. I couldn't speak. I just stared at the laptop. Estate. Clean Out. This was day 4. I wasn't missing yet. I wasn't supposed to be lost at sea for another 3 or 4 days. They weren't even waiting. They weren't even giving me the common decency of being pretend dead before they threw my life onto the sidewalk. The arrogance, the disrespect. They were gutting my house, my home, Amina's home. They were throwing out our memories, our life, everything we had built, and they were doing it in broad daylight. They weren't just thieves, they were vultures. And they were so confident I was gone, so sure I was floating somewhere in the Caribbean, that they didn't even bother to hide it. A hot black rage, colder and deeper than anything I had ever felt, filled my chest. Nia, I said, my voice so low it was barely a growl. Call Mrs. Henderson. Who? My neighbor, across the street, Mrs. Henderson. She sees everything. Call her, now. Get your phone. Use the video. Nia didn't hesitate. She pulled out her burner phone, the one she'd been using for all Atlanta-related business, and pulled up a number from her contacts. Mrs. Henderson, she said, her voice instantly changing. It became warm, friendly, just a little bit worried. Hi, this is Nia Carter, Julius Hayes' niece. How are you doing today? I watched her, marveling at her composure. She was putting on a performance. Oh, I'm fine, thank you. Listen, I know this is a strange request, and I'm so sorry to bother you. I'm calling from Chicago. Uncle Julius is on that cruise his son sent him on. Yes, isn't that nice? But he just called me in a bit of a panic. He has this terrible feeling. You know how he is. He thinks he might have left the gas stove on. She paused, listening. Oh, you saw him leave Friday morning. Well, he's convinced he left a burner on low. He's on the ship and can't call, so he asked me. I have a key, of course, but I'm in Chicago. I was wondering, I know you have a spare. Could you possibly just pop over and check for him? I would sleep so much better, and I know he would too. Another pause. You will. Oh, bless you, Mrs. Henderson. You're a lifesaver. Yes, the kitchen stove. Just make sure all the knobs are turned to off. Thank you, thank you. Can you... Actually, could you stay on the line while you walk over, just so I can tell him right away he's waiting for my call? Nia hit the speakerphone button and put the phone on the table. We heard the sound of Mrs. Henderson's front door opening, the distant sound of birds in Atlanta. I'm walking over right now, dear, we heard her say. Lord, that man would forget his own head if it wasn't screwed on. Oh, that's strange. What is it, Mrs. Henderson? Nia asked, her voice still light. There's a big white truck in his driveway. Estate Clean Out Services. And the front door is wide open. Oh my goodness, maybe he hired cleaners. I don't think so, Nia said, her voice tightening. What do you see? I'm on the sidewalk, Mrs. Henderson said. Her voice was getting shaky. Oh my Lord Jesus. Mrs. Henderson, what is it? They're taking his things. They're taking his furniture. Can you switch to a video call, Mrs. Henderson? Nia asked, her voice suddenly sharp as a razor. I need to see what you see, right now. There was a fumbling sound, a beep, and then Mrs. Henderson's face filled the screen. She was an older black woman, her hair in rollers, her eyes wide with shock and confusion. Nia, can you see me, baby? I can see you. Turn the camera around, Nia commanded. Show me the house. The image flipped, and my world tilted. The camera was shaky, but I could see it all. My front yard, my beautiful zoysia grass trampled, and on it, my life, my floor lamp, the one Amina and I bought in 1980, a box of my old vinyl records, a stack of photo albums just tossed onto the grass like garbage. Oh my goodness, Mrs. Henderson was whispering, her voice trembling. There's that white girl, Julius's son's wife, Brenda. She's pointing. The camera zoomed in blurry. There was Brenda on my front porch in her yoga pants holding a clipboard. She was directing 2 men who were carrying out... Is that the armchair? Mrs. Henderson whispered. The camera focused. It was. The old, overstuffed, faded blue armchair. My breath hitched in my chest. I couldn't breathe. That chair. It wasn't just a chair. It was the chair. It was the chair Amina brought home from a thrift store, so proud of her find. It was the chair I read stories to Anthony in when he was a little boy. It was the chair I sat in night after night holding Amina's hand while the cancer ate her away. It was the chair she died in. She passed away in that chair in my arms, looking out the window at the garden she loved. I hadn't been able to move it. I couldn't even sit in it. It was a holy place. It was the last piece of her I had, and now I was watching two strangers haul it across my lawn. Brenda saw them. We saw her clear as day on the video feed. She walked over to it, wrinkled her nose, and kicked the side of it. "Just junk it," we heard her faint voice say. "Get that filthy thing out of here. I want everything gone by 5. Filthy. She called it filthy. I didn't make a sound. I just stood there watching my life, my love, my entire history being hauled away as junk. Nia looked at me. Her face was a mask of cold, pure rage. "Mrs. Henderson," Nia said, her voice terrifyingly calm, "keep recording. Get a clear shot of the truck's license plate. Get a clear shot of Brenda's face. And then go home, lock your door, and don't say a word to anyone. We will handle this." But his things. "Just do it, please," Nia said. "We have it under control." The call ended. I put my hand on the back of Nia's chair to keep from falling. I felt a coldness spread through my entire body. It wasn't grief. It wasn't sadness. It was something else. Something harder. It was the feeling of steel hardening in a fire. "They're not just robbing me, Nia," I said, my voice so low it was almost a whisper. "They're trying to erase me. They're trying to erase her." I looked at my niece. The last bit of the old Julius, the heartbroken, confused old man, died in that moment. "Find me a way," I said. "Find me a way to take everything back." It was day 7 of my cruise. I was supposed to be in Cozumel, Mexico. I was still in Chicago, at Nia's kitchen table. The video call from Mrs. Henderson showing my wife's armchair being thrown onto the lawn had changed something in me. The shock was gone. The grief was gone. All that was left was a cold, hard stillness. "Nia," I had said after the call, "that van, the estate clean-out, that costs money. And Anthony is cheap. Where did he get the cash to hire them? Where did Brenda get the confidence?" Nia's eyes met mine. "You're right," she said. "The POA, the power of attorney. He wouldn't just be waiting to use it. He would have already used it. They're cleaning out the house because they think it's already theirs." She turned back to her laptop. "They're moving fast, Uncle Julius, which means we have to move faster. We've been looking at the property records. Now we look at the money. How can we—" "He has the POA. He's probably locked me out of my own bank accounts." "He can lock you out," Nia said, her fingers flying across the keys. "But he can't lock out the credit bureaus, and he can't hide from the bank's own fraud departments. That POA is his weapon, but it's also a trail, a bright, shining trail of evidence." She spent an hour navigating a series of secure portals. She had a password-protected account with all 3 major credit bureaus. She typed in my social security number. "This is a soft pull," she explained. "It won't alert him. It just shows us everything." A new screen loaded. A long list. My credit cards. My old mortgage, which I had paid off 9 years ago. And something new. Nia went very, very still. "What?" I asked, my voice already hoarse. "There's a new entry," she said, her voice tight. "A hard inquiry from 4 days ago, the day you left Uncle Julius." "An inquiry for what?" "A new loan," she whispered. "From your own bank, Trust Co." She clicked on the entry. It's a HELOC. A home equity line of credit. A line of credit. I felt my blood run cold. Against my house. The house I own outright. Yes, he used the POA. He walked into the bank, proved he was you on paper, and borrowed against the equity you built. Your house is paid off. In this market, in that gentrifying neighborhood, your house is worth $800,000. I said the number tasting like ash. "At least," Nia pointed at the screen. "And he just borrowed $150,000 against it. I gripped the table. $150,000. When? I demanded. Nia clicked again, her face grim. The loan was approved 2 days ago. The funds were dispersed yesterday. I finally understood. The estate clean-out service. Brenda's confidence. They weren't just planning to get the house when I was declared dead. They were cashing it out right now. They were so arrogant, so certain I was on a ship, that they had already started spending the money. He's not just stealing the house, Uncle Julius, Nia said, her voice filled with a new kind of fury. He's gutting it. He's leveraging it. He's pulling every cent of cash out of it before he even has the title. It was a terrifyingly smart and greedy move. He knew that once I was gone and the transfer on death deed kicked in, the house would be his. And so would the new $150,000 debt he had just attached to it. It was like taking a cash advance on my own murder. He needed the money now. Maybe Brenda was pressuring him. Maybe they already had debts. Maybe they just couldn't wait to live the high life. It didn't matter. He had crossed a line. He had forged. He had lied. And now he was stealing. Actively. This was the leverage we needed. I looked at Nia. I expected to see panic. I expected to see fear. Instead, I saw a smile. It was the coldest, most dangerous smile I had ever seen. It was a lawyer's smile. "This is it," she whispered. "This is what I asked. This is him winning." "No, Uncle Julius," she said, leaning back in her chair and finally looking away from the screen to meet my eyes. "This is him losing. This is the mistake. The big one. The one that arrogant, greedy people always make. They get sloppy." She stood up and started pacing. "We've been on defense, reacting to what he did 4 months ago. The POA, the Todd, that's old news. This HELOC, this is active. This is now. So we call the police," I said, my hands clenched. "We report the fraud." "No," Nia stopped pacing. "No, we don't call the Atlanta PD a fraud case. It'll get buried in paperwork. It'll be a he said, she said, a family dispute. They'll tell you to get a civil lawyer. By the time they maybe assign a detective, Anthony will have moved the money, declared you missing, and be halfway to Mexico with Brenda. So, what do we do?" Nia picked up her phone. "We don't call the local cops, Uncle Julius. We call the big guns. We call the people who don't care about family disputes. We call the people who only care about money." She looked at me, that cold smile playing on her lips again. "We're going to call the IRS. The IRS? I was confused. The tax man. What does this have to do with taxes?" "Everything," Nia said, her eyes lighting up. "He just received $150,000. Did he declare it as income? No. Is he paying taxes on it? Of course not. He stole it. It's unreported income from an illegal source, and that's not even the best part." She walked back to the laptop. "He used a fraudulent power of attorney to secure a bank loan. That's not just tax evasion, Uncle Julius. That's bank fraud. That's a federal crime." "That," Nia said, "is a federal crime. The kind of crime that gets you attention from federal prosecutors. The kind of crime that freezes assets immediately." She picked up her phone. "We're not going to just try to get your house back, Uncle Julius. We're going to set a trap. And we're going to use his own greed as the bait." Nia's mind was working, and it was a beautiful, terrifying thing to watch. She was no longer just my niece. She was a weapon. And she was finally aimed. "He just handed us the gun, Uncle Julius," she said, her voice electric. $150,000, untaxed, acquired through fraud. "So the IRS," I said, catching up, "we report the income." "Oh, it's so much better than that," she said, her smile widening. "We don't just report it. We build a case. A perfect, airtight case. The IRS loves unreported income, but the Department of Justice, the feds, they love bank fraud even more." She started ticking points off on her fingers. "1, he used a fraudulent, unethically obtained power of attorney, obtained while you were medically incapacitated, to apply for a loan. That's bank fraud predicate 1. 2, he received the funds, $150,000, into an account he presumably controls. That's wire fraud, predicate 2. 3, he has not declared this as income, which it legally is since it was obtained through illegal activity. That's tax evasion. That gets the IRS very excited. And 4, she said, leaning in, he is doing all of this as part of a larger conspiracy. a conspiracy to defraud an elderly person and ultimately to seize your assets based on a fraudulent declaration of death. That's RICO territory. That's go to federal prison for 20 years territory. I just stared at her. So, we're not just getting the house back. Getting the house back is step one, Uncle Julius, she said. That's easy. We're going to dismantle them. We're going to use their own greed to hang them. We're not just going to stop the theft, we're going to create consequences. She picked up her phone. I can't fight this from Chicago, she said. I'm not licensed in Georgia, and we don't want a civil lawyer. We need a shark. We need someone in Atlanta who knows the judges, who knows the DA, and who eats real estate fraudsters for breakfast. She scrolled through her contacts. There's a woman, Regina Cole. My mentor in law school used to talk about her. She's a legend in Atlanta probate and elder law. They call her the Hammer. She specializes in exactly this, taking down predatory family members. Naya dialed the number. We're not going to just send her a file, Uncle Julius. We're going to hand her a packaged conviction. We're going to give her the fraudulent POA. We're going to give her the bank records for the HELOC. We're going to give her Mrs. Henderson's video. We're going to give her a copy of your one-way ticket to Belize. We're going to give her everything. And what will Brenda and Anthony be doing? Nia's smile was gone, replaced by that cold, calculating look. They're going to be living in your house. They're going to be spending your $150,000. They're going to be painting the walls, ordering new furniture, and feeling like the smartest people in the world. They're going to be busy building our case for us. We're going to let them. She put the phone to her ear. Yes, I'd like to speak with Ms. Regina Cole. My name is Nia Carter. It's regarding an urgent case of elder fraud and bank fraud in Fulton County. I listened as she set up the meeting, her voice calm, professional, and deadly. She was arranging for a secure courier to deliver our entire evidence package to Ms. Cole's office in Atlanta by morning. When she hung up, she looked at me. It's in motion. Ms. Cole will review the package. She'll get a temporary injunction to freeze the bank account, quietly, so he doesn't know. And she'll prepare the civil suit and the criminal complaint. She'll have everything ready to file. I nodded. The plan was good. It was solid. It was her plan. But now it was my turn. One thing, I said. Nia raised an eyebrow. What is it, Uncle Julius? The timing, I said. When does Ms. Cole file? When do we make the move? As soon as possible, Nia said. Tomorrow, the day after, we have him, Uncle Julius. We should strike now. I shook my head, slowly. No, I said. No, what do you mean, no? Uncle Julius, he's spending your money. They're in your house. Let them, I said, my voice low. Let them paint the walls. Let them order their new marble countertops. Let them feel comfortable. Let them feel like they've won. I don't understand, Nia said, frustrated. I want to wait, I said, meeting her gaze. We've been ghosts. We've been in the shadows. I want them to be standing in the bright, shining light of their victory. Wait until when? I looked at the calendar on her wall. Today was day 7. The cruise, I said. When does it officially end? Day 10 in Belize, but you're missing. They won't expect you. Good, I said. We wait until day 11. The day after the cruise is supposed to be over. The day they're probably popping champagne. The day they're getting ready to call the police and put on their sad, grieving faces to report me lost at sea. Nia's eyes widened as she understood. You want to. I want to be there, I said, a coldness settling deep in my bones. I want to walk through my own front door. I want to see the look on their faces, the look on his face, when the ghost he thought he'd made walks back into the room. I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the Chicago lights. Tell Ms. Cole, nobody files, nobody calls, nobody does anything until day 11. I'm going home. It was day 11. The day after my cruise was supposed to end in Belize. The day I was officially a no-show. The day my son was probably picking up the phone to sound the alarm to start the performance of a lifetime. I took a cab from Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. The cabbie tried to make small talk. I just nodded, my eyes fixed on the Atlanta neighborhoods passing by. My neighborhoods. My city. He pulled up to the curb. Here you go, sir. I paid him in cash the last of the Chicago money. I got out. I stood on the sidewalk looking at my own house. It looked wrong. The curtains in the living room were gone. Even from the street I could smell it. A sharp chemical smell. New paint. I walked up the pathway, the one I'd laid with brick in 1992. My hand was steady as I reached into my pocket for the key I always kept hidden, but I didn't need it. The door was unlocked. I could hear voices inside. Laughter. Brenda's laugh, high and sharp. Anthony's a low, self-satisfied chuckle, and another man's voice, one I didn't recognize. I put my hand on the door and pushed it open just a crack. My living room. It was gray. A cold, sterile, lifeless gray. The color of a waiting room. The color Brenda had always wanted. They were in the kitchen, my kitchen, Amina's kitchen. Anthony was leaning against the counter holding a glass of champagne. A half-empty bottle was sitting right where my coffee pot used to be. Brenda was standing next to a man in a polo shirt, a contractor. They were all looking at the wall between the kitchen and the living room, the load-bearing wall. "So you're sure you can knock it out?" Brenda was saying, sipping her own glass. "I want a clean line of sight. I want a waterfall island 10 feet long, all marble." "Not a problem, ma'am," the contractor said, tapping his tablet. "We'll need to put in a laminated beam to carry the load, but we can definitely open this whole thing up. It'll completely change the space, modernize it." "Exactly," Brenda said, giddy. "This 70s-era junk has to go." "Whatever you want, baby," Anthony said, raising his glass to her. He looked relaxed. He looked happy. He looked like a man who had just come into a lot of money. "When can you start?" Anthony asked. "Well," the contractor said, "soon as the permit clears. And of course as soon as that ownership issue is settled. You said your lawyer was handling the declaration." Anthony waved his hand, dismissing it. "Paperwork, just a formality at this point. My dad, he wouldn't have wanted us to wait. He'd want us to be happy." He said it without a trace of sadness. Just business. I'd heard enough. I took a deep breath. I gripped the brim of the old fedora in my hand. Amina's favorite. I pushed the door open all the way. It didn't make a sound. I stepped into the hallway. I just stood there. The contractor was the first one to see me. He was facing the hall, his mouth opened. He stopped talking. His tablet slipped from his hand, clattering to the floor. "What?" Brenda said, annoyed. "What's wrong with—" She turned. Her champagne glass just fell. It shattered on the tile floor, splashing champagne and glass everywhere. She made a sound, a high-pitched, strangling noise like a dying animal. Anthony turned last. "What the hell is your prob—" His words died in his throat. His face. I will never forget his face. It wasn't shock. It wasn't confusion. It was impossible. It was the face of a man seeing something that could not exist. His skin went from tan to a pale, grayish white in a single second. His glass didn't fall. He just opened his hand, and it dropped thudding onto the newly painted floor. No one spoke. The only sound was the ticking of Amina's old wall clock. Tick, tock, tick, tock. I didn't say a word. I just stood there in the middle of my newly gray living room. I was wearing the exact same clothes I had worn when I left for the cruise. My old slacks, my worn jacket, and in my hand I was holding Amina's old gray fedora. I just stood there. A ghost. A problem. A man who was supposed to be at the bottom of the Caribbean. I just stared at my son, and I waited. Anthony stood frozen. His mouth was open. His glass, the one with the champagne, had slipped from his hand. It hit the floor and thudded, rolling across the newly painted gray wood, leaving a dark, wet trail. He didn't even look at it. Brenda was the one who made the sound. It was a scream, but not a loud one. It was a high, thin, whistling sound like air being forced out of a punctured tire. Her knees buckled. She grabbed the edge of the new counter to hold herself up. Her face, which had been flushed with excitement, was now a waxy pale white. The contractor's tablet clattered to the floor, forgotten. "No," she whispered, her eyes locked on me. No, you can't. You're not." She looked at me like I was a thing that had climbed out of the grave. My son, Anthony. He finally made a sound. It wasn't his voice. It was a strangled croak. Dad, he stammered. My son, the smooth talker, the real estate broker who could sell ice in a blizzard, he couldn't form a word. How are you? Here. His hand, which was shaking violently, gestured at me at the door. The cruise, the trip, it's not, you're supposed to be. He stopped. He couldn't say it. He couldn't say missing. He couldn't say at the bottom of the ocean. He couldn't say declared dead. I just stood there. I let the silence hang in the air, thick and heavy as concrete. I let them sit in it. I let them drown in the simple, impossible fact that I, Julius Hayes, was standing in my own living room. The contractor, who was smarter than both of them, started to gather his things, his eyes darting between me and the door. You know what, Mr. Hayes, I think I've got the wrong day. I'll come back. You stay right where you are, I said. My voice wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was just heavy. It was the voice I used on a job site when a fool was about to get himself killed. The contractor froze his hand on his bag. I looked past him. I looked past Brenda. I put my gaze directly on my son. I took one slow step forward. Brenda flinched as if I was going to strike her. I ignored her. I looked at the ugly gray paint on the walls. I looked at the empty spaces where Amina's furniture used to be. You're right, son, I said. My voice was calm, almost conversational. The trip. I looked back at him into his terrified, guilty eyes. Belize is beautiful this time of year. Really beautiful. The water is so clear. You can see straight to the bottom. I let that hang in the air. I watched him process the word. Belize. But I continued, taking another step onto the kitchen tile, my tile. I decided I prefer Atlanta. It's home. The blood drained from Brenda's face. She was so white she looked translucent. Belize? She squeaked, her voice cracking, going up an octave. Who said anything about Belize? The cruise didn't end in Belize. It was a round-trip ticket. Right, Anthony? She turned to him, her eyes wide with pure animal panic. Anthony, tell him it was round trip from Miami who said Belize. She had done it. She had walked right into the first part of the trap. I just smiled at her, a small, cold smile. But I wasn't on the cruise, Brenda. Anthony finally snapped out of his frozen shock. The terror was still there, but something else was taking over. The desperate, frantic energy of a cornered rat, the salesman. He forced a laugh. It was a terrible, dry, hacking sound. Dad, you're back! He started walking toward me, his hands spread wide as if he was about to give me a big, welcoming hug. Oh man, you're back early. You had us so worried. We thought, we didn't know what to think. You weren't answering your phone. I didn't move an inch. I just stood there like a block of granite. His fake hug died in the air about 2 feet away from me. He let his arms drop awkwardly. You're back early, he repeated, grasping for the lie, his voice getting louder, more desperate. You ruined the surprise. Surprise, I said, my voice flat. Yes, the surprise, he said, waving his hand around the empty, newly painted gray room. Brenda and we wanted to do something nice for you while you were gone. We're renovating, a whole home makeover, getting this old place updated for you. A gift. Brenda, seeing the new lifeline, grabbed onto it. Yes, Julius. Mr. Hayes. It was all a surprise. We were just starting. We were going to get you all new furniture, too. The other stuff was so old. A surprise, I repeated, nodding slowly. It is a surprise, I said. I looked around the room at the new gray walls at the floor where my wife's armchair used to sit. Painting my living room the color of a prison cell, throwing out your mother's things. That was a real surprise. Anthony's face faltered. Dad, it was old junk. We were replacing it. But that wasn't the biggest surprise, son. I cut him off, my voice dropping. I took one more step right up to the new counter so I was only a few feet from his face. I looked him dead in the eyes. The biggest surprise, I said, my voice low, was the $150,000 loan you took out on my house, in my name, while you were gone. Anthony's forced smile evaporated. The word loan hit him like a physical blow. He stumbled back a step, his eyes wide with a new, different kind of terror. This wasn't just shock at seeing a ghost. This was the cold, sudden fear of a man who has been caught. I don't know what you're talking about, he stammered, but the lie was weak, pathetic. Loan, Dad. I was using my own money for the surprise. My money? I said, my voice like ice. My house, my equity. Now you listen here, Brenda suddenly shrieked, finding her voice. The fear was being replaced by a nasty, cornered animal rage. We are trying to do something nice for you, and this is the thanks we get. You can't what, Mrs. Hayes? A new voice cut through the air. It was a woman's voice. It was sharp, clear, and absolutely dripping with authority. It was not Nia's voice. The front door, which I had left open, was pushed open wider. A woman stepped into my living room. She was an African-American woman, maybe in her late 50s. She wasn't tall, but she took up the entire room. She wore a dark purple suit that looked like it cost more than my first car, and a pair of sharp, intelligent glasses. She wasn't looking at me. Her eyes, like a hawk's, were locked onto Anthony and Brenda. She walked past me as if she was my own personal bodyguard, her heels clicking decisively on my hardwood floor. She stopped right at the entrance to the kitchen, a lioness guarding the path. Anthony Hayes, Brenda Hayes, she asked, her voice calm and smooth as polished steel. They just stared at her dumbfounded. My name, the woman said, is Regina Cole. I am the attorney for Mr. Julius Hayes. If I had dropped a grenade into the room, it would have had less of an impact. Anthony's face, which had been pale, somehow went a shade whiter. Brenda's jaw literally dropped open. The contractor by the wall looked like he was about to faint. The word attorney changed everything. This was no longer a messy, private family argument. This was an execution. Ms. Cole didn't wait for them to speak. She walked past them right to the brand-new, half-installed marble countertop that Brenda was so proud of. She was carrying a thick, heavy leather briefcase. She set it on the counter, snapped the latches open, and pulled out a single stack of paper. It was enormous. It had to be 500 pages thick, bound by a thick blue legal ribbon. And with a single deliberate, almost casual motion, she dropped it. Thwack! The sound of the file hitting the marble echoed in the silent kitchen like a judge's gavel. It was the sound of a trap springing shut. It was a physical, heavy, undeniable accusation. She just left it there, a monument to their greed, sitting right in the middle of their celebration. Brenda and Anthony just stared at the massive stack of paper on the counter. The contractor was trying to blend into the new gray paint on the walls. What is that? Anthony finally stammered. You can't just come in here. This is my father's house. Is it? Ms. Cole asked, her voice dangerously soft. She tapped the top page of the stack with one perfectly manicured finger. This, she said, her voice rising, filling the kitchen, is a copy of an immediate revocation of power of attorney, which I filed with the Fulton County Court at 9 a.m. this morning. Effective immediately, any and all authority you thought you had, Mr. Hayes, is gone. Anthony tried to laugh. It was a thin, reedy sound. Revocation, you can't. He gave me the power of attorney. It's durable. It's legal. I had my rights. You had no rights, son, Ms. Cole corrected him, her voice cutting like a razor. You had a piece of paper we will argue you obtained under false pretenses from a man who was not of sound mind or body. A man who was in fact recovering from general anesthesia following a major surgery. She leaned forward and her polite mask dropped. That's a textbook definition of lack of capacity, which makes this document, she tapped the paper again harder, fraudulent. It makes it null. It makes it void. It means that every single action you have taken with it for the last 4 months, every signature, every transfer, every application, was an act of criminal fraud. Brenda's hand went to her throat. Criminal, you had no right to be in this house. Ms. Cole continued, her gaze sweeping over the new paint, the empty spaces. You had no right to hire that man, she gestured to the terrified contractor. You had no right to throw out Mr. Hayes's property. And you certainly, she added, her voice dropping, had no right to apply for a loan against this property. Now wait a minute, Anthony said, trying to find his footing, trying to be the smooth-talking broker. That's a civil matter. That's between me and my father. You can't just— Oh, but I can, Ms. Cole said, smiling that cold smile I was beginning to recognize. Which brings me to this. She reached into her briefcase again and pulled out a second thinner document. She didn't drop this one. She slid it across the marble counter right at Anthony. What is that? He asked, his eyes wide. He wouldn't touch it. That, Ms. Cole said, is a copy of an emergency order to freeze assets, which I presented to a judge this morning on behalf of my client. The judge agreed with my findings. Freeze assets, Brenda whispered, her face going slack. I'm referring, Ms. Cole said, her voice loud and clear, to the $150,000 home equity line of credit you fraudulently applied for Mr. Hayes, the one you had deposited into a new checking account under your name. Anthony's face was a mask of pure, sickening panic. He had moved the money. He'd been caught. As of 10:30 a.m. this morning, Ms. Cole announced, as if she were reading a weather report, that account is frozen. The bank's internal fraud department has been alerted, and every cent of that $150,000 is now locked, pending a full criminal investigation into bank fraud. Brenda let out a sound, a genuine, painful, wailing sound. Anthony, what does that mean? The checks I wrote, the new sofa, the island. She turned on him, her panic turning to rage. The down payment for the contractor, you told me the money was clear. You told me it was ours. Anthony was trapped. He looked from Brenda to Ms. Cole to me. He looked like a drowned man. But it's not yours, is it, Mr. Hayes? Ms. Cole continued, her voice relentless, merciless. It's the bank's money, and we want it back. All of it, which you can no longer access. I hope you didn't spend too much of it already. Because bank fraud, she added almost as an afterthought, carries a federal prison sentence. Prison, Brenda collapsed onto one of the new bar stools she had probably just bought. Prison. And finally, Ms. Cole said, her voice softening, which was somehow even more terrifying. She pointed back to the original massive 500-page document still sitting on the counter, the one that had started this all. That Mr. Hayes, Mrs. Hayes, is a courtesy copy, a copy of a civil suit we are filing against you both. Personally. Anthony just shook his head, numb. Suit. A civil suit, Ms. Cole clarified, in the amount of $1 million. Brenda actually choked. 1 million. Anthony whispered, his voice cracking. You can't. For what? For paint. For intentional infliction of emotional distress, Ms. Cole said, reading from a page. For conspiracy to commit elder fraud. For conversion, which is the legal term for stealing. For the willful and malicious destruction of irreplaceable personal property. She looked up, and her gaze for the first time softened as it rested on me. We've included a full itemized list of every piece of Mr. Hayes' life you threw into a dumpster, including, she added, her voice hardening again as she looked at Brenda, a specific valuation for one irreplaceable antique armchair, the one my client's late wife, Amina Hayes, passed away in, the one, according to our witness, you referred to as filthy junk. The color left Brenda's face completely. She looked like she was going to faint. $1 million, Ms. Cole repeated. We will be placing a lien on your personal bank accounts, on your car, on your condo, and on any and all assets you may have. To ensure that my client is made whole, she snapped her briefcase shut. You, sir, she said to the contractor, are a witness. You'd be wise to contact my office. The contractor just nodded, mute. So, Ms. Cole said, turning back to Anthony and Brenda, who were huddled together, completely broken by their new, unpaid-for marble island. That is the situation. You are in my client's home. You have no legal right to be here. You have 60 seconds to collect your personal belongings and get out. Or I will call the Atlanta police and have you removed for trespassing. Anthony's eyes were darting around the room, wild, looking for an exit, a loophole, anything. The $1 million lawsuit, the frozen bank account, it was all collapsing on him. He finally focused on me, his face a mask of desperate, pleading denial. You You can't, he stammered, pointing a shaky finger at me. The house, it's mine, it's legal. He looked back at Ms. Cole. I know my rights. The transfer on death deed. The Todd, I filed it. It's legal. It's on record. My lawyer said it was airtight. The house, it's mine as soon as he's gone. He had said it. He had finally said the quiet part out loud. As soon as he's gone. Ms. Regina Cole actually laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was a short, sharp bark of pure contempt. That piece of paper, she said, waving her hand dismissively as if swatting a fly. Oh, son, that's worthless. You see, the transfer on death deed has one tiny little requirement. She leaned in, smiling. It requires the owner to be dead. She pointed a finger straight at me. And as you can very clearly see, Mr. Hayes is alive. He is standing right here. That piece of paper isn't worth the ink it's printed on. It's just a wish, a very, very sick wish. She paused, letting that sink in. She looked from Anthony's devastated face to Brenda's tear-streaked one. But, Ms. Cole said, her voice becoming bright as if she was sharing wonderful news. That is the most interesting part of our case. Anthony just looked at her blank broken. What? That piece of paper, Ms. Cole said, combined with a few other exhibits, is what takes this from a civil misunderstanding. She reached back into her briefcase. She pulled out one last thin file and turns it into a criminal conspiracy. She opened the file. You see, we've taken the liberty of sending this entire evidence package, and I do mean everything, to a few other interested parties. She pulled out the first sheet. This is a copy of your father's one-way airline ticket to Miami and his one-way cruise ticket ending in Belize, the trip you never intended for him to return from. She pulled out a second stack of papers. And this is my personal favorite. This is the search history from your laptop, Mrs. Hayes, from this very house's IP address. A fascinating read. Searches from as far back as 3 months ago. Searches like how to report someone missing at sea, how long to declare a person legally dead, and my personal favorite, how to expedite a transfer on death deed in Georgia. Brenda made a sound, a high, thin wail, and slid off the stool onto the floor. We sent this entire file, Ms. Cole concluded, her voice booming, to the Fulton County District Attorney's Office with a formal request to open a criminal investigation into conspiracy to commit felony elder fraud, and given the circumstances, attempted murder for hire, though that's their call. And, just to be sure, she smiled, we sent the other copy, the one detailing the fraudulent $150,000 bank loan, to our friends at the Internal Revenue Service. She looked at Anthony, his body now just a hollow shell shaking in my kitchen. Good luck explaining that unreported income, son. The room was silent save for the sound of Brenda, who was still on the floor, making small animal-like whimpering sounds. The contractor wisely had grabbed his bag and was edging himself out of the kitchen backward as if trying not to startle a pack of wolves. Anthony, my son, he was just a shell. He was leaning against the counter, his legs shaking so badly I thought he would collapse. He stared at the floor, his entire future, his entire arrogant, carefully constructed life dissolving in front of him. Then Brenda moved. She scrambled up from the floor, her face a mess of tears and smeared makeup. But the fear was gone. It had been replaced by a white-hot, vicious rage. She lunged at Anthony, not to hug him, but to hit him. Her fists hammered on his chest, on his expensive tailored suit. You stupid, stupid fool, she shrieked, her voice raw. You told me it was perfect. You told me you had it all handled. You told me he was gone. She hit him again, hard. I am not going to prison for you. I am not. Anthony just took the blows, too stunned to even defend himself. Brenda spun away from him and turned to me, her eyes wild. She pointed a trembling finger at Anthony. It was him. It was all him. I didn't know. I thought he was just helping you. The one-way ticket. That was his idea. The bank loan. He told me it was an investment. I didn't know he stole it. It was him, Julius. It was all him. Tell them it was him. It was pathetic. The two of them, the perfect conspiring couple, now just two rats in a trap turning on each other. Ms. Cole let out a loud, theatrical sigh, cutting through Brenda's hysterics. That, she said, is a conversation you can have with your respective criminal defense attorneys, or with each other after you are charged. She looked at them both. Right now you have two choices, and you will make one today. She held up one finger. Option 1. We proceed. The DA's office will get our file. The IRS will open their investigation. You will both be arrested. You will be charged with multiple felonies, given the evidence, the one-way ticket, the web searches, the bank fraud. You will both be convicted. You will lose everything, and you will go to federal prison. That is your future. It's clean. It's simple. She held up a second finger. Option 2. You listen to my client's civil settlement offer. You accept it, right now without negotiation. And I will advise my client to inform the DA and the IRS that, while you are still civilly liable, he would prefer to handle this as a family. Anthony's head snapped up, a glimmer of hope. Family? Do not mistake my client's generosity for weakness, Ms. Cole said, her voice like iron. He is offering you a way to avoid prison. He is not offering you forgiveness. She pulled one last sheet of paper from her briefcase. Here is his offer. It is non-negotiable. She read from the page. 1U. Anthony Hayes will sign this document, which is a full legal and irrevocable renunciation of any and all claims to Mr. Julius Hayes's estate. You will give up all rights of inheritance now and forever. You will get nothing. Anthony just nodded numb. 2. You both of you are jointly responsible for repaying the $150,000 you fraudulently obtained. Today, you will liquidate your own savings, your stocks, your car, whatever you have, to make that bank whole. You will also reimburse Mr. Hayes for all legal fees, including my own and those of his attorney in Chicago, Ms. Nia Carter. You will be broke, but you will not be in default. Brenda let out a sob. We don't have that. Then you had better choose option 1, Ms. Cole said, not blinking. And finally, 3. You, Brenda Hayes, will be subject to a permanent restraining order. You will not come within 500 yards of Mr. Julius Hayes or this property ever again. If you call him, if you text him, if you even think about him, you will be in violation and you will be arrested. Ms. Cole put the paper down. That is the offer. Avoid prison, but lose everything you were trying to steal, and then some. There was no choice, really. They were ruined, but they were not prisoners. Not yet. They signed. The aftermath was exactly what you would expect. It was just logic. They were broke. They had to drain every cent from their condo's mortgage, sell Brenda's car, and empty their retirement accounts just to pay back the bank and the legal fees. They were left with nothing. The moment the money was transferred, Brenda was gone. She filed for divorce from Anthony the very next day. She cited irreconcilable differences. I'm sure she did. And Anthony, his career was over. Ms. Cole's civil complaint, which was a public record, detailed the bank fraud. The state real estate board got wind of it. They opened their own investigation. His license was suspended, then permanently revoked. The man who was one step away from stealing an $800,000 house was now unemployed, uninsurable, and living in a cheap rental apartment all alone. He had nothing, which is exactly what he had tried to leave me. A week later, I'm sitting in my living room. It's empty. Everything is gone. The old things thrown out by Brenda. The new things, like the bar stools and the contractor's supplies, were repossessed because they were never paid for. All that's left is the smell of that new cold gray paint, the color Brenda chose, the color of a storm cloud. I hate it. I'll have to paint it over, but I'm in no hurry. For the first time in a long time, I'm not in a hurry at all. My new phone, the one Nia bought me, rings on the floor beside me. It's an unknown number, but I know who it is. I pick it up. I don't say anything. I just wait. Dad. His voice is thin, broken. It's the voice of a desperate child. Dad, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Dad. I have nothing. Brenda, she's gone. She took the car, my license. They suspended it. I can't work. Dad, I have no money. I can't even pay my rent. Please. He's crying now, sobbing, those deep, racking, pathetic sounds. He's asking me for money. I close my eyes. I listen to the sound of my son, my only child, begging on the other end of the line. I remember him as a little boy. I remember teaching him how to ride his first bicycle right on the street. He fell and he scraped his knee and he cried just like this. And then I remember the man who stood in this kitchen smiling while sending me on a one-way trip to Belize, the man who tried to have me erased. The boy is gone. Only the man is left. Son, I say. My voice is perfectly calm, perfectly steady. You wanted me to rest. You wanted me to relax. I pause and take a slow, quiet breath. Now, I'm resting. I don't wait for him to reply. I press the end call button. Then I go into the phone's settings. I find the number. I block it. It's done. I look around the empty, ugly gray room. I lost a son. I know that. It's a cold, hard fact. But as I stand here in the quiet, I realize what I kept. I kept my home. The house Amina and I built with our own hands. I kept my dignity. I kept myself. I pick up the phone one last time. I dial a different number, a number I trust. She answers on the first ring. Nia, hey baby girl, it's Uncle Julius. Yeah, it's done. It's quiet. Listen, when you get some time, you think you could fly down here to Atlanta. I need some help painting this living room. I'm thinking that butter yellow color your Aunt Amina loved so much. I think that would look much, much better. This whole ordeal taught me a painful but vital lesson. I learned that blind trust, even in your own family, can be a weapon used against you. For years, I confused my silence with peace. But true peace doesn't come from avoiding conflict. It comes from facing the truth, no matter how ugly. I learned that my value isn't just in what I can give my children, but in the respect I must demand for myself. Sometimes the only way to protect the life you built is to stop being the loving old man and start being the man who built it. What would you have done in my situation? And do you believe I made the right choice? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below.